I was going to say good evening, welcome traders. So this is being recorded for Monday commencing, what's wrong with me? The week commencing 17th of February, that'll be Monday, 17th of February. So let's just have a look at the week ahead. I will be paying attention to the markets. We've got both Royal Bank of Australia, Royal Bank of New Zealand interest rate decision, see if there's any changes there. So far, RBNZ not issuing anything there, but we're expecting a bit of a rate cut in Australia. Then I want to have a look at the USD jobless claims just to see if there's any shock surprises coming out of the US this week. We've been experiencing volatility the last couple of weeks, and I'm curious to see if it starts to reveal itself in terms of the actual fundamentals. That being said, let's go to the charts and have a look at what else we are seeing. So here we are with the volatility index. It's still operating near lows, still lows on the weekly here and monthly, still operating near the lows. So at this point in time, the markets appear to be very, very calm, or at least not on edge. Now, if we have a look at the dollar index, what did happen this week that I think is relatively significant is that we saw a weekly downtrend. We broke to fresh lows, and this is where it gets interesting, is that we're now kind of heading into the range, and I'm curious to see, this is the top of that monthly range. Let's see if ultimately we see the dollar find support this week and possibly start to climb a little bit higher. But so far, a lot of this looking, like solid dollar weakness. We've still got strong bearish momentum on the daily, and so at least initially I'm expecting that dollar to head lower. Once it hits 106, then I want to see how it responds, if it can hold or if it continues to close lower. Now, if it does, if it continues to head down towards 105, for example, then the possibility of that dollar re-entering this range that it's been in for a while is quite interesting. This would then be a failed breakout, and that is not an impossible outcome. It's just a rare outcome. So I'm curious to see what happens this coming week. Looking at the euro dollar, managed to actually have a breakthrough, some strong resistance that the market have been battling with for a while, and actually produced quite a strong bullish candle at this point in time. Now we've got a little bit of a double bottom on that weekly, and so I'm very keen to see this week if we break above these highs. And if we do, of course, that then implies we're going to see that continue over the coming weeks. This could provide some really good brand new trends for end of day traders here. We could see cable had a really good finish to the week as well. It's got a clear uptrend on the daily. It's back into the moving averages, but also looking off that monthly chart, looks like it's finding some strong support, and it's actually created a swing low. So the implication, looking at the monthly alone, is that we will continue to see GBP head at least up towards that 1.2745 level. Then having a look at dollar yen. Dollar yen in a very nice downtrend, coming up to retest resistance, actually looking much more inclined to head lower this coming week. We'll see how it is when it reaches support at around about that 151.50 level, but expecting that to continue down as well. We also know that the Bank of Japan would prefer that it's close to or below 150. Having a look at dollar Swissy starting to break through support levels here. It's got very nice bearish momentum. So right now, technically, it's looking more and more likely as though that is going to continue to head lower, and the next major level for that is sitting around 0.8850. Dollar CAD as well, finally, after such a long period, actually managed to finally break through its own levels of support, starting to head a little bit low. So all of these, ladies and gentlemen, hinting at the potential for dollar weakness in the coming weeks. Certainly here, dollar CAD, don't see any reason why this shouldn't continue down to the top of the range to test that level of resistance for support. Gold as well. So gold actually double topping. If we have a look at it on the 4-hour time frame, just go ahead. We've got a very nice double top here with bearish divergence, like the continued bearish divergence, and a double top. So it's overextended, certainly on the weekly, with a bit of weakness coming in here, bit of exhaustion on that weekly candle. Let's go back up to the daily, and so we can see naturally it's still close to that 3,000 level, but sitting at around 2,900. Anyway, so what I'll be looking for this week is a bit of a continuation to the downside, back down towards the previous lows, back into the moving averages. Be interesting to see if we go down towards $2,800 and find some potential support, or if we're going to see a continued decline. But for now, most of the MACD, most of the technical momentum is looking nice and bullish with the exception of the weekly. So for now, my initial expectation is to see it just head a little bit lower. And again, we could find by the end of the week we get some kind of a recovery. There's some potential for that, but right now expecting that to head lower. Crude oil as well, West Texas here testing support, but here looking relatively bearish. That momentum also looking bearish, and the weekly candle very much looking quite nice and bearish. So I'm expected to break these lows and attempt to head lower. Now let's take a look at the global indices starting for the Dow. So on the weekly here, you can see exhaustion coming in from the top. We've got wicks at the bottom, so big battle happening between the bears and the bulls. So far, it appears as though the bears are winning out here, but I'm looking for a break above these highs and lows this coming week. You can see complete mess over here on the daily. Having a look at the S&P, this actually finishing up near the highs, looking a little bit stronger. But I still am not convinced that it has managed to escape a lot of this just yet. So I'll be looking for this week is to see how we handle resistance. It did finish quite strong, and I do expect it to continue to head up and push and test the highs at 6,200. But how it finishes is going to be an interesting one. Will we just see ultimately a rejection or more sideways motion? I'm not really convinced that it's managed to work out of its system all of the kinks that happen here, and now it's just happy-go-lucky. Let's see how it goes, but I will say this, it has finished relatively strong. The NASDAQ as well also finishing up, closing up above some of these previous highs that had failed. So again, NASDAQ looking relatively strong there. And again, looking at it from a monthly perspective, it looks very much as though it's set to continue higher. So there we go. Some bullishness there. If we have a look at the Russell 2000, so Russell 2000, just a bit of a mess here on the weekly, has not actually decided to follow through just yet on the monthly so far. It looks very slow and steady as though it is ticking a little bit higher. The FTSE, so the FTSE finishing with a little bit of almost a gravestone doji there, a little bit of sign of weakness there on the weekly. Overall, the monthly looking pretty nice and healthy. The daily looking very good. So what I'll be looking for this week again is a bullish candle here to see if we can finish higher this coming week, or if we end up coming back down towards these previous highs around that 8475 or 85 level. The DAX also very overextended, very super nice and bullish, overextended on the weekly. You know, it looks super healthy on the MACD. The momentum is good. The momentum's good on the monthly. All of it looks just amazing, with the exception of, or at least with the idea, the concern, the red flag being, it's just heavily overextended on all three time frames, and therefore could really benefit from releasing some of that buying pressure. So looking to see this weekend a kind of a pullback here, and ultimately to see how the weekly candle finishes, but any kind of pullback here I could see as potential buying opportunities. But yes, it is very much overextended. Let's have a look at Bitcoin. So Bitcoin still below that 100,000 level, just a complete mess over here. Naturally, it makes sense that it's influenced very much by also what's going on in the rest of the markets with regards to, say, the global indices or tech stocks. Not a necessarily terrible finish. It's an inside, slightly bullish indecision candle. So it does have that potential to attempt to go higher. Still overextended on the monthly and not looking particularly strong there. Ethereum. Let's have a look at you. So Ethereum managing to find a little bit of support off the previous lows and actually managing to hold where it is for now. This is more range bound at the moment, which just means that it's a little bit more unpredictable with that outcome. But that weekly now, sorry, I beg your pardon, the daily now looking more like it has that potential to head lower. So that bearish momentum looking good, bit of a consolidation into the moving averages. So I'll look to see any kind of a nice strong move to the downside if that's going to follow through. Right, let's have a look at the Mag 7. So Apple actually recovering relatively quickly. My only kind of concern with this in general is just that we still have some of this bearish divergence creeping in, certainly more visible on the weekly. We've still got lower highs there despite this attempt to move higher, and we're still producing lower lows on this, so still bearish over here. Normally what that would imply is that we would get this consolidation until it decides that it's had enough of a break. It's basically trying to release that buying pressure. But when you remove this, the price action looks incredibly bullish. It looks really good on the monthly. That looks really nice and healthy, and the daily looks pretty good. So that leads me to kind of be very cautious as we approach previous highs, and to see again how this week finishes out. That weekly chart here hinting at the fact that it's also not free and clear. So just exercising caution there. Microsoft testing the lows, also showing lots of bearish momentum here. You can see price already heading lower, even though we've got equal lows here. So the implication on this one technically is that there's a fair chance it could break support and head down. We've got Amazon. Amazon for me, interesting because we had this very nice little bull flag here. We broke higher and then we've stumbled ever since then. Otherwise, also on the monthly here, a little bit of an inside bearish candle, double top forming. That's not an inside candle, I beg your pardon, but also showing some possible wicks and exhaustion over there. So this week, I'll be looking to see again if we break these lows, come back down towards the 220 levels and test that for support. Alphabet. Bearish divergence here, you can see it on the daily, breaking down, breaking through support here, back below those levels. When we look at it from a weekly perspective, we've also got a bit of bearish divergence there. And from a monthly perspective, we're doing a bit of a retracement. So for me, also not seeing a lot of strength here with Google. Potentially it wants to head down again to 180 or possibly down to 175. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't do that in the beginning part of the week and then possibly finish and recover by the end of the week. We'll see. It's just got, obviously, I'm seeing some weakness across some of the Mag 7. Meta here, for example, I think I drew this in as a potential area for it to start to stall, and it's just been on fire, so let's just remove that. It is now obviously considerably overextended on all three timeframes, very similar to the DAX German 40, and you can see here again just an insane run. This is almost certainly would really benefit from a pullback. I'm not seeing much weakness at this time. Everything here just looks relatively healthy, but visually I can see price action could really benefit from a pullback. Then we have NVIDIA now making an interesting recovery. So the monthly is interesting to me because this is a very strong rejection. This is a solid engulfing bearish candle. And usually after a serious battle like this and a candle like this, we would see a follow through to the downside. Instead, we've seen a bit of a recovery. So again, this is the kind of thing that makes me a little bit edgy. This is a very quick recovery considering how weak it was the month before. It's almost a complete U-turn. It is no doubt a bullish recovery so far. Looks really good, but I'm curious to see how it now copes as it approaches these highs. If it manages to follow through in the coming week. And then Tesla, again, also similarly, finished with a little bit of a bullish bounce off this area where we were looking for a correction to, but also a little bit indecisive and below key levels. When we look at it from a daily perspective, it paints a slightly different picture. The momentum is heavily bearish. We've got a very nice pullback into the moving averages, which have sort of reordered themselves into a 50, 20, and 10. A little bit of a bearish candle here. So if we break the low of here, we might see a continuation to the downside down towards that 310, 300 area. Alternatively, it might come back up to test this level of resistance here that was support and then continue down. And then, as I said, finally that big bounce here might be enough to keep it, to get it back up into that. From a monthly perspective, it's not really a terrible it's not necessarily a terrible correction, and it has definitely let off some of that buying pressure. So just a little bit of a contradiction between the sort of bullish recovery on the weekly and this daily looking very keen to head a little bit lower. So I'm going to see how this plays out in the coming week. A little bit tricky. We might find that it wants to ultimately, and I think the next week will be very telling. Should we continue down, we then would see a much different finish on that monthly. All right, so I'm going to leave you with that. Plenty to keep in mind. I want to wish you a fantastic week. Keep in mind some of the general volatility coming just out of the new administration. But otherwise, I wish you a fantastic week. Thank you.